Hello and welcome to another in our videos on the labour market. This time we're focusing on geographical mobility and immobility of labour. Geographical mobility is the ability of people to move around an area, a region or a country in order to find work. And as we'll see, geographical mobility is affected by many factors such as family ties, transport networks, transferable qualifications and common languages. One of the barriers to people finding work in the UK and many other countries is geographical immobility. Now, there are many reasons why immobility may well exist. Here are some of the most common ones. In no particular order, one of the key barriers to movement is the existence of family and social ties. Typically, younger people tend to be more geographically mobile. They don't necessarily have those well-established networks and ties which might keep them in an area. A second factor is the financial expense involved in moving home, the costs of putting a property up for sale, for example, and the costs of removals. Not every employer is willing or able to meet some or all of the costs of moving. A key factor, which we'll look at in more detail in a second, is the significant regional and often local variation in property prices. A major barrier to people moving is the lack of affordable property to buy, as well as the high cost of renting a suitable quality property. Another barrier to mobility is the cost of living varying between regions, for example between Scotland and London, and also between countries. Living costs will vary across countries, as do tax and pension systems. Geographical mobility might also be affected by the extent to which a country introduces migration controls, barriers to free movement. This, of course, will become a key issue in terms of Britain's renegotiation with the economic union in Europe, the extent to which free movement will become a thing of the past for the UK. There are often cultural and linguistic barriers to living and working overseas, for example. And if you want to bring some behavioural economics into the discussion, there's a strong default towards staying where you are, staying in the place that you know. Typically, people who have been in an area for some time have a dislike of change, and that includes the location of your job. As we've said, the housing market is really key to understanding this topic of geographical immobility. This chart shows average house prices for UK countries and regions, and it's taken from October 2015. And look at the chasm, the enormous difference between the average price in London, which is now over £500,000, the average price in Wales, for example, or Scotland or the North East, less than £200,000. Average house prices in London are now more than twice the UK average. And this is a significant barrier to mobility. People who want to move, for example, to the southeast and London to find work find that they can't afford to. And people who live in high price areas may be reluctant to move. They may want to stay and gain from continued house price inflation. Housing unaffordability is a major barrier to geographical mobility. And it's not just the price of buying a house, it's also the cost of renting. Our final slide shows a comparison between the average monthly cost for buying a home for first-time buyers versus the monthly cost of renting a property in the UK. And the data takes us from 2009 through to the summer of 2015. Now, hopefully you can see from this data that the ratio has changed in favour of cheaper costs for buying versus renting. Take 2015 as our example. The average monthly cost with buying a 3-bedroom house in the UK was £666 per month. That's for a first-time buyer. The monthly rental cost was £722. So a lot of students in their exams talk about the high house price effect being a barrier to labour mobility. And that's correct and important. But you might get extra kudos for saying that actually the bigger problem in the UK is the high cost of renting. 20% of people now live in private rented property, and high rental costs, which are themselves a product of high house price inflation, are perhaps the biggest single barrier at the moment to geographical mobility of labour.